was 18, I was a babysitter for 3 young boys across town from me. They were 3, 5, and 7. I'll just call them Adam 3, Bobby 5, and Chris 7 ABC. Adam and Chris were the easiest to take care of. Adam was a surprisingly well-behaved toddler, and Chris just liked to play his video games and watch TV. Bobby, on the other hand, was very moody, a picky eater, and difficult to get to go to sleep. I had worked for this family for months, and I was somewhat close with their mom, Lucy, who was raising them by herself. They had a decently modest middle-class house. Lucy's parents would help her out with finances and such. All 3 boys had their own rooms. Lucy worked nights at the time, so I'd always babysit till around midnight on weeknights, and my college classes would start in the afternoon, so I worked out schedule and sleep-wise. One night, after playing some Nintendo Wii games with Chris, I put Adam to bed, and not long after Bobby. Chris's bedtime would be 9:30, Bobby's would be 9. After tucking Bobby in, I started telling Chris to start changing into his PJs after his next game was over. Chris insisted I'd play one more game of Wii tennis with him, so I made a deal that he'd go to bed after if I did. During our game, though, Bobby started crying for me up from his room. I paused the game and went upstairs. As I entered his room, he said there's a monster in his closet. I laughed, and I believe I pinched his cheek and said something along the lines of, "There's no such thing as monsters, but I'll leave the door open so you feel safer." Then I asked if that made him feel better, and he nodded. Chris was downstairs calling for me to come back, all annoyed, so I went back to the game of tennis and we resumed. Eventually, we finished the game with no interruptions. At this point, Chris went upstairs to change into his pajamas and brush his teeth, and I was alone in the kitchen watching TV. That's when Bobby's cries from upstairs echoed down again. I went up to his room again, and he was hiding under his covers. He said once again, "There's a monster in the closet, I heard it." I looked at the closet door, which was closed. I looked at it for a while, actually. Then back at Bobby and asked, "Why do you think there's a monster in there?" And he replied, "I keep hearing it moving." I asked him if he wanted me to take a look, and he shook his head. "No, I walked closer to the closet anyway," and he said, "Don't." I didn't take him seriously until I heard something in the closet myself. It was very clearly the sound of something alive in that closet that tapped into the door, or something behind the door. Bobby whispered, "See?" I turned around and picked up Bobby and said, "We're going to another room." I also grabbed Chris from the bathroom and brought him into Adam's room, where I locked the door. Adam and Lucy's room share a Jack and Jill bathroom with 2 entrances. I went into the bathroom and called Lucy, and quietly asked if there was a possibility of there being an animal in the house or in the walls, because there were sounds that Bobby was hearing that I heard myself. She sounded concerned right away and wanted me to check the closet. I kept her on the phone as I went back to Bobby's room. My discovering the closet door to now be ajar confirmed that there was someone in the house with us. I told Lucy, and she freaked out, telling me it was most likely her crazy ex, and to get the kids out of the house. I suddenly felt like my life were in danger, and her ex was going to come out of nowhere and run at me. I went to Adam's room and managed to get the 3 kids out of the room, but just as I did, I heard the front door to the house slam shut. I peeked down into the living room, and there was no one there, but the front door was shut. He must have made an exit while he could. I went to lock the door, then called 911. Lucy came home from work early and was there when the police came. Without cameras or anything, there was no proof that it was her ex, though. Her ex is the father of Adam, but she keeps him away from her because of their past that I won't get into for her privacy. Long story short, he can't take it, and she just recently blocked his number, which would explain the possibility of him breaking into the house. The police recommended changing the locks on the doors and such to Lucy. She understood I wouldn't feel comfortable staying in that house for a while after that, so she started letting the kids stay with a relative or one of her parents coming to watch the kids. I don't know what happened after that because we kind of fell out of contact. I didn't really like the fact that she was okay with me checking the closet when she was already suspicious that it was her ex. It was definitely a horrifying experience. I had just turned 14. It was the summer of 2012. I was looking for a job. My grandma had told me about a family that she was friends with, and they had 2 boys, Alexander and Danny. Alexander was 10 and Danny was 5. I was very excited to have a summer job and get some extra spending money. I went over to meet the family with my grandma, and they were friendly enough. The 2 boys seemed easy to handle and not babyish or whiny at all. In fact, the boys and I were playing with their trucks, getting along great. I set up a date with the parents, and they actually had a dinner to go to the next night. So the next night, it became time for me to head over to the house. It was a humid, rainy night. I walked into the house, and the parents were just getting ready to leave. They gave me a paper with rules and such, things they didn't want the kids to do and their routines. They wrote a little something on the side that said, "Danny swears he hears tapping on his window every night, but not to believe it because they think it's just a silly story that kids make up." I was only 14 myself, so reading this was a little unnerving, but I sort of forgot about it. It was a chill night. We watched TV and played with toys. They didn't give me any sort of trouble, but when I told the boys it was time to get ready for bed, I noticed Danny starting to stall and get kind of distressed. I ignored it, thinking he's only 5 and probably wants to stay up later. Eventually, I got them both to settle down and go to sleep. About an hour and a half had passed. It was now 10 p.m. I heard Danny groggily but loudly yell for me. I rushed up to him and asked what was the matter. He told me he heard the tapping noise again. I instantly felt uneasy and nervous, but I just flicked on the light and looked out the window. Nothing outside except darkness and the solar lights from the neighbor's driveway. I calmly told Danny that it was probably just some bug since it's summer after all. He seemed to come at ease when I said this and laid back down. As I walked out of the room to shut his door, I heard a faint tapping noise against his window. I got the chills as I flicked on the light again and looked out the window. And again, nothing. I kept telling myself that it was just bugs flying into the window. But something deep down told me to do something. I told Danny not to worry. As I opened the window and yelled out, "This is private property, I'm going to call the police." Moments after I did so, I heard a frantic scurrying into the forest that was across the yard. By now, I must have had goosebumps all along my arms and legs, and I immediately called the police for real. I called the parents right after, and they were thankfully already on their way home. The police arrived and didn't seem at all surprised by what I had told them. They had gotten other reports in the area for quite some time about some stranger going up to people's windows at night, looking through them and tapping on them. They said they got calls telling them the same thing almost every week. Danny's parents just never believed him, and I guess took it as some little kid's story or imagination, but it turned out to be very real. They searched the whole neighborhood and never found the person. After that night, I told the family in the nicest way possible that I didn't feel comfortable watching their kids anymore. And I still think to this day what would have happened if anything went differently. Like, God forbid the window was unlocked or open. Maybe sometimes parents shouldn't just brush whatever their young children say as just their imagination. This happened when I was 8 years old and my little sister was 6. It's a memory that's kind of scarring to the point that I just remember it so vividly even as an adult. And it's something that stayed with me. Our parents hired a one-time babysitter for a weekend when they'd be away on a couple's trip. It was some 16-year-old boy who responded to an ad that my mom posted in the public library. He happened to go to the high school that my parents attended, so I feel like they felt a safer connection with him. He was watching us for 3 nights from Thursday to Sunday. His name was Nathan. I don't know his last name. If I did, I'd say it. Most of the first night is a blur. I was only 8 after all. I remember not much other than playing Ratchet and Clank on my PlayStation in the basement all night because I was obsessed. The same thing happened the next day on Friday. I was playing Ratchet and Clank for so long that I guess Nathan came down to build rapport with me and asked to play with me. He told me he also liked the game, so we played multiplayer versus mode. From what I remember, I actually was having fun and started to like Nathan. The next day I had my friend Zachary over and we played soccer in the backyard, which Nathan volunteered to referee as he came outside with my little sister. Basically, he was a completely normal-seeming dude for my 8-year-old mind. Zachary left not long after we all ate the pizza that Nathan ordered with the money I assumed my parents left for food. That night, before going to sleep, I was playing on my DS in bed. When Nathan came in and asked if I wanted to play more video games, I'm sure I respectfully told him I'm tired. He left as expected, but that's not where this ends. I always was a heavy sleeper as a kid. Not anymore, but when I was 8, waking up in the middle of the night wasn't a regular occurrence, so waking up in my pitch-black room was definitely a weird thing to happen that night. I remember flipping on my side after hearing my door closing. I looked across the room towards the door, and as my eyes adjusted to the dark, I saw someone standing in the corner of the room. Before I could digest what was happening and scream or react in any way, I heard Nathan go, "Shh," and whisper, "It's me." I didn't respond, but then he slowly got closer to my bed, pulled the covers off of me, and I swear he was about to get in the bed before I screamed, "Stop," or something along those lines, and he froze. I got out of bed and left the room. I went to my little sister's room, took a blanket from under her bed and laid on the floor shaking, feeling extremely confused and uncomfortable. The whole next day, I didn't see Nathan. I knew he was in the house because he fed my little sister breakfast, but I knew he was avoiding me now. I couldn't exactly call my parents because I didn't know either of their cell phone numbers. It was a weird long day of me staying in my room and playing games with my little sister. Nathan never came in once. At night, I couldn't sleep for obvious reasons, and I don't know how much time passed before hearing my door creep open again. This time I didn't look up. I laid there until I heard the door close, and then a few moments of silence later I looked up to the door, but he wasn't there this time. I turned on the lamp to confirm this, but even at 8, I knew he was creeping around again, and I wanted to go to sleep in my sister's room to protect her in my mind. I got up and took my pillows and blanket to my sister's room, and lo and behold, Nathan was already halfway towards my sister's bed in the pitch-black room. I yelled at him to get away from her, and he told me to calm down, he's just checking on her. He hurried out of the room, and I locked the door. That was the last time I ever saw him. The next morning, I woke up on my sister's floor and told her, let's play games in her room until Mom and Dad get back. Which was early in the day, thank God. We heard our parents get home and talk with Nathan outside, but we didn't leave her room until he was gone. My parents asked me why I slept on her floor. I don't remember what I said, but I know I didn't tell them the real reason. In fact, I never did. I regretted often not telling them all those years ago so that Nathan would get in trouble. I'm scared because of me. He might have actually at some point successfully hurt a child. It's sadly something I kept bottled up my whole childhood simply because I felt too embarrassed and awkward to tell anyone. Subscribe to my channel and don't forget to turn on notifications to see you in the next story.